It's such a long, convoluted story, but as best I can explain it, here we go. Send. A friend of ours and his wife got involved with this is all allegedly, with a pretty popular YouTuber out in Minnesota and his wife. They began wife swapping. Send. Then they began doing cocaine in the home of the popular YouTuber where their 5 children lived. They also had guns in the house. Eventually, our one friend left this crazy situation, but his wife stayed behind. Because she was caught up in all the insanity. See how nice? I didn't call her a cunt, Judge. This is real life. I'm not making this up. I'm not that good a writer. Well, while the popular lawtuber and his actual wife and concubine kept living in denial and looking for legal ways, as you can imagine, because the guy's a lawyer, and I should have pointed out on YouTube, he made millions live streaming court cases of Kyle Rittenhouse and then Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. He kept trying to weasel out of it. Well, it turns out my friend, we'll call him person A, okay, sent me a naked picture that I never asked for. Of the lawtuber's wife. Well, the picture was taken willingly of her standing there naked in front of him because they were having sex while she was distracting him, knowingly so that her husband could have sex with his wife. She is not a victim here. And they're all doing this with 5 children in the home. Okay? Right. They're all in this. They're all acting like idiots. Then I wrote, Laney, isn't this wild? So, of course, the guy, his name, well, they know his name. He's a lawyer in the law. He decides to file a revenge porn case, Judge, obviously to discredit the witness. Now, this is, and his name, and he showed, I'm sorry, I lost my place. A revenge porn charge against our friend and me and my wife, who I showed the picture to, because if someone sends you a naked picture, you're like, look, I told you, and then you delete it. Right. On screen to prove the point that I want nothing to do with these idiots after he sent it. And if someone sent you a naked picture of a woman, wouldn't you show it to your wife and say, hey, baby, I didn't ask for this? Well, now, I don't think this should be revenge porn. Okay, well, now, whether I think this should be revenge porn at all, I want nothing to do with it. But we're apparently going to be subpoenaed to fly out to Minnesota to testify when we're actually more on the side of the guy who sent us the picture, because at least he knows he's an idiot. Then I wrote, how's that for a start? Our friend who's involved with this, nothing. Our friend who's involved with this, a friend of his, and not the Aaron guy, but he's like, he said we should plead the 5th, but there's no way we should plead the 5th and say, because I watch a lot of court TV, because it might, there's nothing we did incriminating, and that's why we can't believe they waste taxpayers' dollars to fly us out there. And I also heard, and then I'll end it, on that LawTube guy, who's a very nice dude, I'm told, and I apologize if I called him a fat whale. Because the power of subpoena ends at the state line, but not in some cases. Apparently, Minnesota is so blue and so ass backwards that it's more important to testify in a revenge porn case for a woman who knowingly sent naked pictures while neglecting 5 children to New York, which also thinks the same way. And scene. If you couldn't hear that, you're welcome. Not you, Judge. I know you heard it. I apologize.
We can hear it, Geno. It's fine.
It's almost like a bar association question, for the bar. And the fact of the matter is, let me take it little piece by a little piece. I tend to be organized. So in the beginning, the subpoena, unless it's a federal case, this doesn't sound like that. The state is limited to the geographical limits of their boundaries. So the subpoena means nothing. What generally happens if you ignore a subpoena, it's ignoring a court order. And so you could be held in contempt. And there's a hearing for that and whatever. But they have no jurisdiction over you to even bring you to that court. And if you don't go to Minnesota, and it doesn't fall under one of the exceptions, which we call the long arm statute, which doesn't apply here, the reality is you could ignore the whole thing. Nobody's going to do anything. Now, I was trying to ask myself the question. I wasn't trying. I was asking myself the question, what kind of lawsuit was it? Is it state, federal, and what was the basis for it?
Oh, my God. Keanu, you want to take this one? Because, Judge, I can't. This is, if I could say one thing, then hand it over to my much more eloquent, concise wife. This is insane what the lawsuit is. And what's going on with us is so insanely stupid to us that I didn't bother to tell you what she's about to say. Wow.
Well, let me just add something in the meantime so that you put it in context. Mm-hmm. The Fifth Amendment is the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution, and it has various components. And if you have any potential of any criminal anything, you have the right to take the fifth. And what happens if you do that is they can go to court and get an order that requires you to answer or else. And that may or may not happen. It sounds to me that nothing's going to happen in the court system in Minnesota. And when you say they took pictures, is it just pictures of her nude, or is it pictures of her doing things that are visible that might be considered a violation of the law? Now, some of the old laws are very antiquated. Sodomy laws and things of that nature are very antiquated. So it's possible. And you mentioned the use of cocaine. Well, that's against the law in Minnesota, I presume.
Well, Judge,
So
let me make it easy for you.
You're a participant to that, maybe.
Yeah.
It was one picture, as I said, one picture, like I barely remember it. How's that? That I'll say it again, that she posed for in front of him while she knowingly was distracting him because they both knew their spouses were having sex, but she wanted to distract. That's it. It's one stupid picture that I immediately deleted, and it just, the fun we've been having ever since, as you can imagine. So again, circling back to what you're saying, it's like, but we've done nothing wrong. So the last thing I would want to say is because there's nothing that would. Am I right?
This is a nothing burger.
Yes, it is.
Bottom line is you have no real involvement other than being the recipient of information. There may be some argument made by someone else that
Exactly.
as an invasion of the right of privacy, because that's all there is here. There's no
Right. So
not a
that's
defamation. It doesn't seem to fit into any cause of action other than an invasion of the right of privacy. Now, in those cases, the defense is usually consent. And you say she consented to do this. She can't be the participant in the lawsuit as a plaintiff because she consented. Although whether she consented or not is an issue of fact that a jury would normally decide. This is something that we would generally just accept as accurate. If she was in court, she'd say, I never consented, I didn't know, whatever. And the jury decides that, unless there's a waiver of the jury trial, in which event we do that. But the reality here is if you were living in Minnesota and were subject to the subpoena, you could assert certain privileges, including the Fifth Amendment rights and other things. But you're not there. And nothing
right.
to do with
And, and we wouldn't, why would we plead the fifth? We already told when the officer called us to ask us about it, we just told the truth. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you something. I'm going to interrupt you. I apologize, honey. Should you ever lie to a cop?
Well, by the way, lying to the police is a criminal offense.
We would never.
Whoa.
Right.
That's no. See, I know that, Judge. And a lot of idiots are like, no, you should have just lied. No, say that again. You broke up. Let me see if my mic works. Lying to the cops is a criminal offense.
You don't have to. You didn't have to. Well, you didn't need to talk to them. When the guy calls you or the gal calls you, say, I have nothing to say. Period. The end. There's nothing they can do to follow that up.
We didn't think of it like that. We just go, we're just going to tell the truth.
I don't break the law, so I didn't realize I could say that. The cop called me 3 times. I'm like, what? And I told them, and at that point, I'm like, whatever you need to know. Because again, Judge, it's one thing if it's my brother or my cousin or my wife, but when it's 4 idiots causing me trouble, I'm like, what do you need to know? Because I want not an inkling of anything. And don't get me wrong, maybe that's why, that's obviously why I got dragged into this. But am I wrong to be raised right? That after 56 years, to never have had a call with a cop where I'm like, oh, you know what I always do in this situation? No regrets about that. I almost said, is that clear, Judge? I'm sorry, Judge. I'm joking.
Well, first of all, I started my career as a deputy district attorney, as a prosecutor. So I'm familiar with what the cops do. I used to see them every single day. And the reality is, it sounds very strange to me that a cop is calling you in New York. You weren't a participant in anything. Whatever you know is basically hearsay without any exception applying that I could think of. And the reality is, I would have just said, I have no comment. Thank you very much. Good luck. And
I guess you're right. I suppose we could have said that, but Eugene and I just tell the truth. We were just like, yes, it was a picture.
Okay.
It went nowhere else. Yeah.
Yeah,
anyway, but then does that mean we need to be subpoenaed to actually physically, we can't zoom in and say the exact same thing. We have to be subpoenaed on their dime and go to Minnesota for, like you said, a nothing burger. Okay.
Well, the reality here is, Kiana, that they can't do anything to compel you to come to Minnesota, number one.
Right.
And I can tell you, it doesn't sound right to me, having been involved on all sides of these as a prosecutor, as a defense lawyer, and then later on the bench. So I can tell you, there's something missing here. This is not a case where somebody's going to call you in New York to ask you something that somebody else told you or somebody else gave you. I can't even see the sticking of a good cause of action, a criminal cause of action. I don't know what the lawsuit is about, but if the guy is a lawyer, maybe he's just trying to punish somebody and forcing him into a lawsuit.
Oh my gosh. Bingo, 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 bingo. And so let me just say this. If you look at
Keanu,
the whole...
Can you tell him 5 more times what your favorite parlor game is?
Parlor game?
First of all, I can tell you that this is totally out of the norm. Cops generally don't do this unless you have a serious crime where there's been a real injury or...
So if you look at the entire picture, the 3 people, so the law tube, he was a lawyer, and his wife and our buddies, Aaron, his ex-wife now, they were all arrested for an incredible amount of drug charges and child neglect. And
now you're getting to something meaningful.
They were all arrested and charged with, they had unregistered guns lying around. They had, an inordinate amount of cocaine, ketamine, and 5 kids in the home, right? Our buddy Aaron got out of the situation. He said, "This isn't for me. I can't, live like this anymore. There's guns, drugs, and there's also children around." So Aaron got out of it, and they hate him for that. Meanwhile, so those people are arrested and charged with all of these drug charges, right?
It's felonies. Okay.
Yes, all of these felonies. Yes, and the man in the situation, Nick Rekieta, I can say his name. This case goes on for forever. He finally takes a plea. He pleads guilty to all the drug charges. They drop it for the 2 women, but he has pled guilty for all of the drugs. They have since gotten their children back. Another piece of the story is they had one of the children, this, I think, 9-year-old, tested positive for cocaine in her hair follicle. Okay. Meaning, that's not good. I don't know. A hair follicle test. It's not like somebody just rubbed her head while they had blow on their fingers or whatever.
Well, let me interrupt you for a second.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
I have a thought I want to pursue. The reality here is he's pled guilty to a criminal charge. Mm-hmm. Everybody else has gone out of the lawsuit. Right. Why would they be even looking for you to do anything unless it's involved with a probation hearing? And that doesn't sound like it's applicable here anyway. Right. The fact is, this is not a civil lawsuit. I guess it is. I guess he's got arrested and he pled, but he has filed a lawsuit somehow to vindicate himself or whatever his motivation may be. But you have nothing to do with any of this.
Right. His motivation. And since now that's settled, but during all of this, Aaron sends because he's a broken man who lost his wife to these strange drug addicts or whatever, what have you. Sorry if that's untoward to say. He sends this photo to Geno to try and have some autonomy over his manhood. Is it gross and wrong? Absolutely. However, when they found that out, they would have never known that at all. Is it wrong? Yes, but they would have never known that. But when they found that out, because Geno and I talk about our lives on our shows, they thought, in my opinion, this would be a way to get back at Aaron and discredit him as a witness in their case because he's the only witness. That's at least how I see it. So now, even though this case is still going on and they've settled theirs, we're still going to go forward with this, I suppose. But
well, first of all, you're not a party to the litigation, so you're not really involved in it in any
Right.
event.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, was this published? This photograph published over the internet?
No.
No.
Just given to you?
Yes.
Well, that makes a big difference, because when you talk about liability for publishing things that shouldn't be published, you get into issues and a variety of other things which don't apply here because it's just sent to you.
Right.
That in and of
Judge,
itself is not a crime.
They keep saying the word disseminate. Disseminate means spread to a wide amount of people or what have you. It was one photo Geno didn't ask for that was sent to him.
Doesn't matter. Disseminate means to give to even one person. It's still a dissemination.
Okay, so I am wrong about that.
Is it a crime for you to receive something from somebody unsolicited? Of course not.
No, it's not a crime for us.
Or anything,
so we are wrong about the word disseminate, because if you Google the word disseminate, it wasn't published online. It wasn't published anywhere. It was just sent to Geno. He didn't ask for it. That's one person. But I guess according to the law, yes, disseminate even to one person. Yes.
If I was sitting as a judge and was deciding what's called a preliminary hearing, to see if a crime was committed and if the person who's being charged was involved in that crime, I would not hold the defendant to answer. I would dismiss the case, because in reality, there's no case. And if somebody sent you a picture of somebody, you open the mail, you don't know who's sending you whatever they're sending you. As long as you're not retweeting it or sending it to somebody else, you're done. You're a recipient of a piece of information, period. The end. And I can't imagine this lawsuit going very far, personally. No. But then again, Minnesota judges are Minnesota judges. They follow Minnesota law, and it depends on who you get. It's like they said in that movie, it's like a box of chocolate. You never know what you get. In fact, I used to tell litigants when I was practicing full time, who's your judge? And they'd say, I don't know. I said, that's exactly the point, isn't it? It's the uncertainty of it all. I don't have any problem with what you've told me so far, only, of course.
Right. Well, and Judge, you touched upon it, Judge. Obviously, this guy, he's such a good lawyer, law tuber wise, which makes no sense, which might be a meaningless word to you, but he's doing it to discredit Aaron. And what gets me, and when I say gets me, as a 56-year-old responsible, take responsibility for my actions, raised right person, it galls me that he's dancing through legal whatever circles or whatever you want to call it, because he knows he can do this and drag us into this horse shit, when the bottom line is he's a piece of shit dad with a stupid wife who would rather
doesn't matter. What happens a lot of times is
people. That's where I'm coming from.
But everybody sees it from their own perspective, and it's a question of what's important. Let me finish. The bottom line is, if somebody were to sue this guy and there was no merit to it, there's something called a cause of action for malicious prosecution, and meaning there's no basis for this lawsuit, and you did it because you were intentionally trying to get A, B, or C, whatever it turns out to be. And there's also another cause of action, generally called abuse of process. I don't know enough about the facts in this case to be able to even render an opinion, because I don't have all the information. But the fact of the matter, the guy is a lawyer and he was charged with possession of cocaine, a felony. The chances are, again, I don't know how the Bar Association works in Minnesota, but here in California, the chances are, if you have been convicted of a felony, and a plea is the same as a conviction, by the way, it's an admission, you lose your license, or at the very best, you hope for a suspension.
He can't practice law anymore.
Maybe he's trying to lay it off and say it wasn't mine or whatever it may be, so that he could deal with the Bar Association. That's a possibility too. But the reality is, there's no cause of action that I can think of other than an invasion of privacy, and that doesn't apply here. If it's a picture of a nude person, so what? You see nude persons every day. You go on the internet, you could spend hours, I suppose, just looking at nude pictures.
It's true. So, don't Google me, Judge. I'm just kidding.
But the result, but the truth of it is that you should never really put anything on the internet if you don't want the whole world to know about it.
Absolutely.
So the end result is, I don't know enough to make any comments other than to say this is nonsense.